Human capability is something we need to hear stories about and hear from people who love sharing those stories. When he's not hosting his leading show on Voice America, the one and only Tony D'Urso joins me for a podcast. You're about to enjoy that, so let's jump in right now. Hey crew, Eric Wright here from the DiscoPosse podcast. Thank you for watching. We are about to be in for a treat with Tony D'Urso. Really funny story. Tony spells his name differently on the internet because the internet doesn't like apostrophes. How rude of the internet to do that. So when you think about Tony D'Urso, it's D'_URSO. Don't be confused by the way you read it on the internet. If you search for it without the apostrophe, you still come up with Tony. Reason? He's a fantastic creator of conversations and sharing stories. He's got his own show on Voice America. He's got his own podcast. He's got his own books. He's going to talk about vision, about growth, about human potential, and really what we can do to amplify ourselves. This was a real pleasure to share time. Speaking of sharing time, if you could share a little bit more time, you could do me a favor. Just tickle that little button over there, that little, wherever it is. I never know. How long have I been doing this podcast? And I still don't know where the subscribe button is. Up, down, wherever it is. Hit the button, smash it if you so desire. Up to you. Leave a comment because we love to hear comments. Ooh, we're going to be doing some really cool stuff. So comments are welcome, even good or bad ones. I like honest feedback. Okay, let's just jump in. This is Tony D'Urso on the DiscoPosse podcast.
Hi, this is Tony D'Urso. I am the host of the Tony D'Urso Show, which is the #1 talk show on Voice America. And we're getting about 1 million listeners a month. And here I am on the DiscoPosse podcast with Eric Wright. And I am pumped and ready and excited and delighted and honored, all three, to be on the show. Thank you so much, Eric, for having me on.
That is amazing. See, Tony, when you have professional broadcasters on, it makes my job easy. I could go home now. I could just sit down and I could let you go. Tony, I'd say the honor is mine in that I've been lucky enough through getting connected through the team at Kitcaster, they're a fantastic bunch, and they've connected me with a lot of amazing folks. When they let me know that you were available, I went through the Tony D'Urso backlog, and I am a student of Tony D'Urso right now. And you are a really fantastic conversationalist, interviewer, and just you're very good at digging into what matters when you get into conversation with folks. So first of all, for folks that are brand new to you, if you want to give a quick bio, of course, this is fun. I always appreciate Tony D'Urso with the apostrophe. However, Google does not like apostrophes. So for folks, go to Tony D'Urso, DURSO.com, of course, and you can get the real links. But anyways, Tony, let's share a little bit of your story first.
Eric, first of all, it's so great to speak to a fan, someone that binges, someone that's binged or binges, however the case may be, on my shows. I really appreciate it because I really try very hard to curate and bring people to your audience, to you, because, frankly, and this is why I started. There's so many good people out there, Eric. There's so much advice, so many books and classes and webinars and seminars and lectures. And you and I and every single person on this earth cannot listen to every single person, read everybody's book, listen to everybody's lecture, take everybody's class. It's impossible. There's just not enough time in the life to do that. So what I do and what I specialize in is interviewing and speaking with people who are at the top of their category, whom I coined the term elite entrepreneurs. I have a book out on Amazon, which is a best-selling book, Elite Entrepreneurs. And these people, give you an example, Wesley Snipes, the actor, Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, Jeff Hoffman from Priceline, and Frank Shankowitz, Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I call them elite entrepreneurs, and I get their story, and I bring that and curate to you. So whether you're a startup or thinking about it, or in a career, and you want to hack your job, or you're a small business owner, there are people that talk about their journey and how they became successful in every category you can imagine, and literally every category that you need to know about in order to be successful at your job, your career, your business. Categories such as HR, photography, online, sales, financing. There's so many niches or niches, depending on where you are in the world, that's really important for you to learn. So I bring this to people one show a week. It's now an hour show. I've been doing this for a little over 5 years. I've had a couple shows, and now it's one show called The Tony D'Urso Show, which I mentioned earlier is the number one talk show on the entire Voice America network for several years running. I'm on 14 AM FM radio stations, and I get over 1 million listeners a month. And while you and your audience can listen on Spotify, iHeart, you can listen on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and so forth. If you want all the shows, including the back early shows, which I also call the embarrassing shows, where I was winging it, like, what do I do now? They're at tonydurso.com/podcast. And that's where you can get everything. And if you know somebody I've interviewed, you just put the name in the search, and you'll find it. Like Kevin Harrington, just type in Harrington, and poof, there comes up his show. So that's just a way to access it at tonydurso.com/podcast. So I work to help people improve whatever their game or their job or their business is. This is the premise that I started, and I wrote up a map to success. I call the Vision Map, which is actually a new book coming out on Amazon. Not sure when. It's called Creating Your Vision, but I don't know when that's going to come out. Maybe a month or so. The book's written, and it's just going through its final process. And this is to help you go through all the process, because again, there's so much. Now, let me give a little qualifier on that. Every single person I speak to is smart. You know something, you're knowledgeable about something. You can eventually figure this out, Eric, but it takes so long. It could take you so much time to really get good at your game. So if I bring experts who talk about their problems, their troubles, and how they've had to work to make it successful, it really inspires, motivates, and gives a lot of good tips. That may or may not be a long answer to why I did what I did and how, but I'm happy to go into it a little bit more.
Well, the interesting thing is, like you said, you work with incredible people, and I mean, they're founders, they're CEOs, they're heads of marketing, they're individual content creators, they're sports, enthusiasts, whatever it's going to be. But the one thing that humans in generally suffer from is we call it the curse of knowledge, right? And you get so wrapped in your understanding of your own platform, product, whatever, that you often can't separate yourself from it. And what you can bring in doing the vision map, and like part of that process is that you come with sort of the unwashed eyes from the outside and say, like, well, describe to me what you do. And almost like therapy, you can say, so what I'm hearing you say is that there's a problem that happens in the world. And don't you hate it when you go and bottle tops are always constantly sliding off of bottles when you're driving? Well, we've created, like it allows you to very specifically hone in on what you're hearing and what's resonating to you out of this thing. And then it's a real freeing thing to open up to a third party. And it's hard. It's very hard for those folks to do that, because they'll always say, like, who can know my product better than me? Well, maybe your customers. And the problem is they'll never be honest with you because there's a commercial relationship. But I bring in Tony, and Tony sits and listens, and then he talks to the customer and he talks to my team. Oh, Okay, now I'm getting a real story. And it is a beautiful thing. I love your way of doing that. And of course, like I said, it comes through in your content, in your conversations with people, that you're very good at sort of pulling on the strings that really matter and getting to what's very interesting really, really quickly.
Thank you, Eric. As you were speaking, you gave me a great analogy. A concept came up of a dictionary. Yes, a dictionary, everyone. Oh, it's got all the words. It's got everything. So if you just give someone a dictionary and say, "Here you go," it's like, how do you extrapolate what you need? How do you use what you need? How do you get to where you're going? How is there anyone that has this problem? I don't even know the problem that I have. So how do I even know that I have a problem or that I need to know about this or that or leadership or quality or the 7 biohacks to success and so forth. I don't even know that I need these things. But when you listen to the show, my show, for example, you're getting people that are going through that journey and explain how that can help you in a way. It's not a sales thing. It's all done to help. And a great analogy, which I've been using lately, is a diamond. Yes, a diamond, Eric. Everyone is a diamond. Everyone here is good at something. You listening right now in the audience, you're good at something. You know something, whatever that may be. And so you are akin like a diamond. What you know, consider it a polished facet. A facet is like one little tiny little surface of a diamond. When you polish that, it shines. You right now, you shine in something. And when you learn a little bit about marketing, you're polishing that facet. When you learn a little bit about how to write a book or how to communicate, you polish that facet, and so on and so forth. And as you go through life, you're learning and polishing those facets. And you, as a diamond, you're shining with what you know, how you can help others, how you can improve your company, your product, your service, whatever you may be doing. So that's what the show is designed to help make everyone better that way. And it's consider it like free mentorship. You're being mentored by a millionaire, a billionaire. Most of my audience are. You're being mentored by them 1 hour a week. So it's and you don't know everything you're going to learn until you go through it.
Well, what I've really in like I said, in watching you and the diversity of folks that you speak with, and it's something that I try to do as well, and that you started off with like, oh, I'm going to go to who I know, and I know this area. One of my favorite things is that suddenly meeting somebody who is in a sort of vastly different area than I've ever been before, and taking that curiosity to them to just discover their thing. And you find, that there are things that map, that make sense. I'm a technologist, but I'm a cyclist, I'm a guitarist, I like these things. And as you realize, like, oh, well, they all have a beginning, an end, a theme, a thing, a process of learning. Then you talk to somebody who is a sports person or a CEO or a race car driver. And in the end, it's about mapping and understanding their motivation, what gets them going, what does, like, and like you said, I love this idea of, I can't go take an HBR, course or read this long form book because I don't have time. But what I can do is I can put my headphones on while I'm going for a run or on the treadmill or something, going for a walk, or even just sitting in the background, and I can pull in an hour where you basically are like Blinkist for an incredible business education, because it's not just repeating, the highlights of a book. You're live pulling crucial information through conversation, and you can hear it. You can hear the way they speak to you. It's not canned. It's a unique skill to be able to pull someone through the conversation and let them still feel like they're leading. It's a unique thing. It's interesting to hear and how you're able to do it.
Thank you. And there's a lot of good surprises as well. One of my guests talks about how to make your brand stand out. Do you know how to make your brand stand out? there are some points that are so clear and so simple and so well explained that you'll want to make changes in what you promote, and better promote, how to make better changes or improvements to get your brand to stand out. Another thing is, do you know that you can literally, not even a joke, not even an exaggeration, you can literally predict the future and what's going to happen in your industry? We go over that with one of my guests, the Anticipatory Organization. No, that's not the right name, but the word anticipatory is in it. And it's just app with Daniel Burris. And it's just amazing when he explains how you literally can create this great knowledge base of what you can literally predict is going to happen in the future. And that makes all the difference in your decisions in what you do in your business or your career. So it's things like that that we learn. And so I'm just so glad that people like it and enjoy it. And I guess 1 million listeners and growing is a little bit of a testament to that.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. I'd love to talk about your growth journey, Tony, because you get to be the one that's always pulling people through their story. So I think it's time to turn the microphones. And how did you go from first, I want to choose this as a format. I want to take this on, because the first handful you're just trying to find your feet and see where it fits. But then the evolution of the way, like you said, you go back to some of the first shows, you're like, you cringe a little bit sometimes to listen to them, but it's part of the growth experience. So how did Tony decide, it's I want to start trying this out and then make it a thing?
Well, I've spent 32 years in corporate America, and I've learned a lot about marketing, advertising, business, sales, etc. And in the year 2000, I formed a company and I did the fundraise, and I raised $3.25 million from friends and family in a 6-month period. And I assumed the role of vice president sales and marketing, and I did all the marketing and lead generation for the company. And I just continued to learn how to bring people to you. And the internet was very embryonic at that point. It was like, what do you do with it and how? And but we started working with that, and that went very, very well. Now, as a as an employee, you're kind of pegged in your income a little bit. I mean, I'm making comfortable 6 figures, but there was only so much I could go unless you have stock options or other things like that. There's always a ceiling. So in the year 2007, I had the opportunity to start a lead generation marketing company, be the CEO of it, and that kind of takes the limit off my income. So I did that in 2007 and really focused, and I made a lot of people a lot of money, and I generated a lot of people, and I learned a lot of basics, hard won basics on how to get people, eyeballs or what have you, to visit you, to visit your website, and so forth. Well, that went very well, Eric. However, in the ensuing 7 years I did that, there were 4 major industry regulations, protocols, and changes that totally impacted how we did marketing, how we did lead generation, and so forth. Give you an example. One Monday, I go into the office, and one of my clients, I'm doing $1 million a year in sales on just that client. I have multiple clients. Well, they canceled. Why? What happened?
Wow.
Well, there's a new federal regulation that came down. The attorneys got together and they realized that their company could no longer accept marketing services the way that they were getting, and they had to retool. So meanwhile, out of business. And this happened with all my clients. Boom, 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 boom. And this is the 4th time I had a major impact to my business in 7 years. And I got really tired of it, Eric. And I looked for, what could I control myself? What could I do no matter what happens in the world, as best as possible? And I kept hearing this word called podcast. And I'm like, what's this thing, podcast? And when I found out, Eric, I was like, hey, I'm Italian. I can do this. I can talk. So I was smart. I got a mentor. I got a well-known radio personality, Michael Benner, who's a who's who in Southern California, and he mentored me and gave me great tips, and to this day still does, on interviewing, presentation, radio, and so forth. And I learned all that I could learn in a couple weeks. I'm Italian. I do things fast. So just boom, 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 boom. I learned how to podcast and I jumped on 1 hour live on Blog Talk Radio. And I'll be kind to myself. I won't use the word embarrassing, but I will say I learned things. I definitely learned things between that and being mentored. And I used my skill, my knowledge, my abilities of generating leads and people and getting people to know about something. I promoted myself. I became my best promoter. And got tons and tons and tons of downloads and people listening to my show. It was a high-rated show called Revenue Chat Radio. And then in my second year, I wrote a book, Easy Sales Procedures, and I got invited to join Voice America. And I created a second show called The Spotlight with Tony D'Urso. And so then I'm running 2 shows a week. And that was just a bit much. So I think in my third year of doing this, I merged both shows into the Tony D'Urso Show. And it's Italian. There's an apostrophe there, but search engines have been butchering my name. So I just took the apostrophe off. So I know it looks like a typo, but that's just how it is. So, and then I became the number 1 show on Voice America, and I have been number 1 for several years running, getting hundreds of thousands of downloads and listeners every month. And I've just
It's
grown and grown and grown from there. And as I've grown in the show, I've picked up more and more, let's say, well-known uh, household names, some I mentioned earlier, millionaires, billionaires, and so forth. And I've just kept growing. And I love interviewing people who are at the top of their category.
one of the things that really stands out when you described your story that people may not even pick up. If I look at the timing that you started 2 significant ventures that were successful, for in many ways throughout some of the most challenging times, like you started at the beginning of 2 fundamental country, in fact, international wide failures in the world. In the 2000, the dot-com crash, basically you survived through one of the most challenging waves of business failure. And then in 2007, you began at what was at that point only Dr. Michael Burry and a handful of hedge fund folks understood what was about to happen in the world. And we watched the financial collapse that happened globally. And yet, through that, you persevered and were able to stay focused on what you were trying to achieve and survive those things. It's not insignificant to be able to weather that storm. And even, you talked sort of, I'm sure the timelines are always compressed, right? We talk about, you losing a number of clients in a period of time because of, regulatory changes. The whole marketing world really took a strong hit. But I imagine that you probably kept the lights on for quite a while. And when most people just said, I'm not going to be able to take more failure, I want to get out now while I feel like I'm on top. But Tony, you keep pushing. What 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 makes you tick? How did you do that? What's your mindset as you go through that?
I have so many answers to that question. But let me start off simple in Italian. There's 3 steps to success, if you want to say it. 1 is keep at it. Number 2 is keep at it. Number 3 is keep at it. You don't fail until you stop. Now, when you're in the middle of it, you don't really think of those words and you don't really think of that. But when you're in the middle of it and things are crashing around you, you've got to feed your family. You've got to pay your bills. You got to put gas in the car. How, you're propelled by this strong intention to survive no matter what. It's just, you're not going to let something affect you. And I've been beset in my podcasting with some serious problems, but you would never know it because I refuse to give up. I guess I've learned a lot from speaking to some of the most successful people in the world, and learning from them, and they mentor me on that show, and they mentor you on that show on how they've made it. And it sounds easy now that now that now that I can go and look back in the past, it sounds easy, but I did not fall off, roll out of bed, or fall off a log, or whatever the cliche goes. It was hard work, but the key thing, the foremost thing is you want to be successful. You have no choice to be successful. You're going to solve this. And there are problems. There are serious problems and challenges. Even the podcasting. In fact, there's a word in the dictionary. Can you believe this, Eric? There's a word in the dictionary. Most podcasters go, what, 7, 8, 9, 10 episodes? I've run into them. It's called pod fade. And 2 years ago, before the COVID madness of 2020, before that, the year before, Blueberry said 75% of podcasters don't make it into the second year. Well, it got even more worse the next year. So there's a lot of problems and issues that beset podcasters. The key is monetization. And I teach that to my students. I teach them how to be successful, how to monetize, how to make income with what you're doing. And it's work. It's not like, it's roll up your sleeves and stuff like that. So thank you. And I would say the only reason I'm successful is I just really refuse to give up.
And it comes through in your caring about, you know, that getting through the other side, because quite often this is the thing, right? It's, I remembered you hear the sort of, it's a Lance Armstrong quote. A lot of people don't like Lance Armstrong, but let's put it aside, put his personal choices aside. But he said one time, like, if you quit, no one else, everyone will know and no one will care, right? It's a whole thing of like, it's your choice of why you quit. And really, when it comes down to especially startups, said there's actually only two reasons that startups fail. It's they run out of money or the founder quits. It's purely economic or choice. There's a lot of reasons why they run out of money. There's a lot of reasons why that would occur. But one of the most common things, this, I didn't realize there was a word for this. I've got a lot of friends who are like fantastic people, and they have great conversations, and I love talking with them. And I'm like, yeah, they're like, we're going to start a podcast. And like you said, oh, they all make it to episode 10. And then the wheels come off the bus because it's work. You got to fit it in. You've got to do these things. And I know, I'm like I said, I just pressed publish on, as we're recording, on my 181st episode. And
Congratulations.
there was a gap in the middle where I think it was about 25 in, and it wasn't, I was doing it with work and just kind of like doing it off the side of the desk and sort of aligning it to my work. And they said, look, there's no way to measure whether it's successful and it's not impacting sales. So like, we just don't think we can back it. And I was like, okay. And I got busy myself, and I said, well, maybe I'll just put it on hold. And then I went back about 6 weeks, 7 weeks later, and I checked the iTunes for it. I'm like, oh, somebody had asked me, to show an old show. And so I went and I looked at it, and I saw there's reviews there. And I was like, oh, good golly, people listen to it. Now I got to keep going. I was suddenly reinvigorated. I'm like, okay, how do I fit it in? And like you said, I was the only one that let it stop. So I'm like, get on the bloody horse, fit it in. And so half an hour a week, I could fit it in. I thought, can I do this every other week? If I can do, 30 to 40 minutes every other week, I mean, there's no reason I can't do it. And now, 3 years in, I'm doing 1 hour a week, and I've got a backlog because of, like I said, being inspired by folks like you, Tony, that taught me that like episode 180 doesn't happen without 179 episodes before it. You just got to muscle through. And sometimes you'll have a show that you maybe struggle with, just like everything with work, everything. It's like, it's not all great days and perfect endings. It's a lot of, gumption, if that's sort of people sort of think of that as a word, right? It's just, you got to push through some stuff, but you got to know that on the other side of it, there's worth in doing so.
And and that ties into this vision map that I'm coming out with, because we talk about, okay, something happens, you're blocked, you're out of income, you're out of money, you're out of steam, there's a regulation, you can't talk anymore. I mean, there's words that I am not allowed to say as a result of the madness of 2020 and the world shutting down. You can't say certain words, which I accidentally said one of those words earlier, but I'm not going to say it again. But when these things happen, Eric, what keeps you going? Why? Why podcast? Why are you doing whatever you're doing? Why are you selling widgets or helping people with HR? Why are you a coach? Why are you doing whatever you're doing? And in the vision map, it starts off with what's your vision? And I can give a whole training class on this, but you basically, what is it you see yourself doing, like with a D? What are you doing? You go into the future, you look back and you go, in the past, like almost like creating a movie. Well, in the past 2 years, I did this, I did this, I did this. This is my vision. Now, that's really not a perfect definition, but I'm just trying to get the concept. There's more to it. I'm just being really fast and kind of slamming it together, but that's a good way. Like, well, what am I doing, in this venture? What am I doing? And then right below that, the fuel, because that venture is like the vehicle, the car driving down the freeway. Well, what's that fuel? Right underneath that venture that's making that happen is the purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? And that's, who are you being with a B? What do why are you doing it? Who are you? And then below that, there's like 7, 8, 9 steps, but just I'll give you 3. And below that is your long-term accomplishment. Your long-term, what are you trying to do? Now, people call it a goal. But I don't use that word, because a goal could be what I did today, this week, this month, 3 months from now, or this year, or it's a ball in the net. There's so many definitions for goal. I just took it out. I go, well, what are you looking to do long term? And that's what you see yourself as having accomplished. I wrote this book, I did this lecture, I did this podcast. And when you put those 3 together, and that's your life, that's your business, that's your whatever, it helps propel you despite any bumps in the road or blockages. It's very, very powerful. It only stops when you let go of it. But if you hold it, like I'm holding up a clenched hand now, I'm not going to let go of this. And as long as you don't let go of your dream, your goal, your purpose of why you like to do it, you will be successful. And I'll just say one last thing on that, Eric. The purpose is like, I'll do this for free. I'll get up every day in the morning and I'll do it. I'll podcast every single day and talk to people. I love it. I love helping people. And it doesn't matter if I get paid for it or not. I'm not joking, folks. That will propel you, and you will make money if you stick with it. Very important what I've just said. Please kind of soak this up, and I'll explain more in a book, and there'll be a class and all sorts of stuff. There's a lot to it. This is like really fast, but this is years of experience.
It's something that's counterintuitive to a lot of people. The first thing they think is, I need to immediately figure out how to pay for something. Like, how do I get paid to do this thing? And yeah, like I said, I'm a student of Tony, in that I've taken on this thing of like, I love doing this. I don't, if I'm, I mean, I happen to have sponsors. I happen to have some other things that come through it, but I didn't chase it down. They came, and that's what makes it enjoyable, is that I'm not out to try and fill spots or whatever. Like, there may be a point where I have that happen, but right now I'm doing it because I love it. And even if I get paid for it, it doesn't make me love it more or less. I would do it for the love of the game. And like you said, you hit something very important in even the semantics of the way you describe what it is. A goal is something we all get busted by. A goal is a to-do list with a 3-year timeline. And you know what we do with to-do lists? Defer the task to the next day because we didn't have time for it today, right? And if the goals are years down the road, oh boy, it's really easy to just defer it by another week or 2, and then a month,
Yeah. I
and
actually
readjust,
have
right?
a solution for that in the entire vision map, and how it goes all the way down. There's a whole methodology to it. But yes, and you know what? For who's listening in the audience, you may or may not know, 20, 30, whatever years ago, companies had 10, 15, 20-year long goals and strategies. Can you imagine
Yeah,
sitting
I
down
know.
with people all day long talking about where you're going to go in 20 years? It's out of mind. It's preposterous. When I was doing podcast, I figured I had a 2-year goal, and I accomplished it. But today, people listening to this or tomorrow, they'll go, 2-year goal. That's weird, because with technology today, you can be a millionaire in 2 days.
Yeah.
You could be a millionaire in 24 hours. I've spoken to people that have done this sort of thing. It's a whole new world, but the 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 def, the words, definition, the basics are still the basics. So you can apply this whether it's a, you know, 6 months to millionaire world, or 2 months or 10 days, whatever it is. These basics are still going to be applicable no matter what.
One thing I often hear people, they'll say like, "Hey, what do you think about becoming a YouTuber?" And we kind of joke sometimes about this, like it's a pejorative, a YouTuber. Like I've got kids of varying ages, and so I see different types of YouTube content all the time. I watch some myself, right? And I watch mostly to learn of like, how do they do this? Like, what's the way that they're doing it that's keeping viewers up and retaining interest, and just it's neat to be a student of it all the time. And someone says to me like, "Oh, why don't you become a YouTuber?" I'm like, "I don't have the commitment or the time." It sounds like it's just a thing, like you're just firing a video. Like I could sit here and I could, unwrap Kinder eggs, and you see channels like this that have 12 million subscribers, not because they spent 20 minutes unwrapping a Kinder egg, because they spent an hour a day doing it, and then an hour a day doing editing and doing keyword research and then posting it for 3 years. So someone says to me, "You want to be a YouTuber?" So you don't have the commitment for it. Yeah.
I will tell you this about YouTube, and let me put it in a very political, in whatever I've been podcasting 5.5 years. I started putting all my videos on YouTube, and in 5 years, and I promote it. I spent a lot of money promoting, and I have a service that does social media promotion. By the way, I send visitors, so I spend a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and literally I've sent thousands and thousands and thousands of people to my shows on YouTube through my promotion. I have a very large social media network. And in 5 years, Eric, I got under 50,000 total views on everything. I was like, what? And my what's it called? Subscriptions, they would go up by one or two and then down by three, up one or two and down by three. And I'm like, this is being manipulated. So I went to Rumble. And in 2 or 3 weeks, I've got like over 5,000 views on my shows. It's not being manipulated. It's like, oh, is that how this works? So you kind of have to learn as you go, because otherwise, if you want to be a YouTuber, and I get what you're saying, it's like a full-time job, and you've
Yeah.
got to spend thousands of dollars, because only certain people are selected, it appears, and I say that from experience. Certain people are selected that rise up, and the rest aren't. And if you don't talk to talk or walk to walk, it happens. And then you get these, you know, you get these people who are paid. They're paid money to go on YouTube and say bad things. And you can tell that they never heard the show. They don't know anything of what you're saying, and they say something bad that has nothing to do with the show. You know that. They're called trolls, and they're paid because they go on just to say something negative, but they have no idea what you said on the show. So how can you comment if you don't know what was said? So you learn very fast that they're paid, and that their job is to discourage people from listening. So you're going to have that. And I think it's, unless YouTube wants you to be a rising star for their own reason, it's something that get on multiple other places. But it's definitely not going to be the key for where you're growing unless it's the only platform you have. Let me make this more simple. I'm gonna exaggerate a little bit. There's 22,376 social media platforms that you can be on, but you can't get on 20,000 yourself and answer and post and comment. Pick the key ones. Pick where you're going. Is it going to be Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, and work those. And I work, and engage and speak with people on my key social media platforms. And I've got over 200,000 followers, but I'm not on 20,000. I'm on
Right.
really push hard on 4 or 5 social media platforms or less. And that's a good key to success because otherwise you're super diluting yourself. So if you're thinking of getting onto YouTube because it sounds good, I understand. Excuse me. I've tried TikTok. I'm there on TikTok, and I realized very rapidly the amount of work and the effort. And it's like, do I want to spend hours a day doing this or paying somebody big money to do this? You realize quickly where it's going to go. So you should experiment. You should try. But when it's all done, you're going to get more bang for the buck, so to speak, by the key big social media platforms.
And I mean, that goes to one of the important both strategic and tactical pairings of being focused, setting what you're where you want to be, right? Is it going to be follower count, viewership, audience size, share of voice, whatever? There's lots of different phrases we have. But if you go to 10 places and try to grow, then you'll have 10 poorly grown audiences versus if you choose 2 or 3 at the most kind of thing, and you stay focused on it and you measure and adapt and put your efforts towards it. Like it's one the easiest thing that people do. And we're human by human behavior. It's very easiest for just to go like, oh, squirrel, right? We
Yeah,
see some neat
exactly.
thing, some new network comes up. People got all Clubhouse crazy for a while. And I haven't heard anybody talk about Clubhouse in a month and a half now. But yet it was all like everybody was all over it because it was the new hot thing. It's
Yeah,
not going away. It's just that the buzz is gone. And so a lot of people maybe try to invest in it early, then they lose focus or effort and attention. And somebody else will keep succeeding on there because they're going on bloody Clubhouse every day. And that's
yeah,
their thing. They're choosing that. But you can't just go in and suddenly become a runaway hit. It's like
exactly.
success. 5 years in, the reason why Tony, you're at the point of being an overnight success with years of lead up, right? Like I always joke I was in a band for a long time, and it said every band you talk to, you see that big coming out thing where they played at the Grammys or whatever, and it was a first time, and they had a gold record and they were an overnight success, and you're like, I saw them 14 years ago in some podunk bar playing to an audience of 40.
How embarrassing, huh? In a way. Yeah,
I an overnight success is one of the worst things that we can aspire to be because it just takes away that there's a grind and it's what you need to do. But
it's so
it's I'll
true.
say this, not just grind, but grind with a purpose.
Yes, yes, yes. And I've learned a lot on marketing, lead generation, social media, and I use what I've learned. And now because I like to help, and I created a service where I do social media marketing for people, especially podcasters. And one of my students last year hit 2 million downloads. Another one of my clients hit 2.5 million downloads. So I've learned how to help and take all that we've just said in this interview, and just shorten that time and how to get the real people listening to your show, because that's what a lot of podcasters want, of course, to help them grow. So I do that as a service. I just mentioned that because I've learned that from all my years of experience, and I really like to help podcasters. And we all need to communicate. It's such a great thing to be able to say what we want. And yes, pick your platforms and stuff like that. Absolutely. and just grow with it. I didn't get over 100,000 followers on Twitter overnight. I just keep growing and engage and engage and engage and engage, and it just grows. And I'd rather have 100,000 on Twitter than 1,000 people on 20,000 different platforms.
Yeah.
So pick your, in a way, pick where you're going to put your effort is very, very key takeaway to this. And you can be successful in literally anything that you want to do, based on some of these points that we've talked about.
The other thing is, beyond just persistence, is fitting it in. We talked briefly about, people would hear this and they say, "Oh, it's an hour a week that I commit to it." And I mean, obviously, the truth is, it's much more than an hour a week because I have to do editing and research and whatnot. I mean, I could choose not to, but for the quality that we want to get, you research your guests, you read their books, you're putting a lot of other external effort. You're a prolific creator as well. You're an author of multiple books. So, Tony, how do you prioritize and maintain? You've probably got multiple streams of kind of content creation on the go at any time. Being creative is a real challenge to fit in. It's hard to
It is.
schedule it, right?
It is. It is. You have to be very, well, again, it goes back to that vision and that purpose and your long-term objective that I mentioned earlier. Once you get that clear, and these words that I just said, yeah, these words are in the dictionary. You hear them all the time, Eric. You know the word egg and milk and sugar and flour and salt and vanilla extract. You know these words and others, cream. But I challenge you to make me a really delicious, souffle. It's a whole nother thing to put it together. We joked earlier about it's all the words in the dictionary, but when you put it together, that's what is great on getting people to express and communicate on our shows when we speak to experts, because it helps people put it all together. And there is a there's a finesse to it that we've learned. And I actually lost one of the points I actually lost one of the points that you were talking about. I had a really important point to say, and I've never done this in 5.5 years, but I'm going to say it. Can you please refresh me on what you were saying? This is a first, but you know what? It's okay. We're humans, right?
Well, no, and that's it, maintaining focus when you're
Ah,
multi-streamed,
oh,
right? Like you're,
thank you.
especially in creative avenues, right?
It's it's the purpose that keeps you going. That purpose that I was saying that gets you up whether you get paid or not. I work everything by a checklist. I have a checklist for getting my guest on, promoting the show for this week. I have a checklist for, different things that have to happen. And in the vision map structure, I have a method of how to put something on your things to do list that comes from well, it goes, I'll give you the rest of the points. It's vision, it's purpose, it's long-term objective. And below that, how are you going to accomplish your long-term objective? Well, you need a master plan. The master plan consists of two things: a strategy and tactical. Strategy is like, okay, well, we want to capture that island because it's the corridor and we can control and keep the enemy out if we capture that island. That's sort of like a strategy in military terms. And the tactical is, okay, well, what are we going to do to capture that island? How are we going to take over? So you work out all these tactical steps that accomplishes the strategy, that accomplishes that long-term objective, which is just about a year or two that you want to accomplish. All right, so you've got your tactical plan. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. We're going to do this to take that hill or that island. Well, now what comes below that is your 30, what I call 30, 60, 90. And that's your 30, 60, or 90 days. It's like, this is where the rubber meets the road, Eric. Okay, well, I've got my strategy, my tactical, I've got my plan, my purpose, my vision. I need to make money. I need to make income. I've got this great plan, this great thing. How am I going to make income? It could be I'm going to do a mastermind at sea, and I'm going to bring on 10 people to do a mastermind, and I'm going to charge them $10,000 each. And I'm going to promote that, and it's going to take 2 months to put together. So that's 60 days. Or I've got a class that I'm going to do, and I'm going to do a webinar, but I need to do X and X and X and X and Y. And that could take 3 months to roll out. So you've got to have, by the end of a couple months, literally making income on that plan. No joke, no baloney. And you've got to work that out. Now, these plans, these words, while they're in the dictionary, they take some working. A good vision map takes weeks to put together. But I'm going to explain that in one more second. So after your 30, 60, 90-day plan, now that plan goes into your daily things to do list. And the daily things to do list is on that plan. It's not put gas in the car, go to the store, go buy a house, go read a book. That things to do list is specifically only and totally for that vision. And you keep it and you write it down, and you don't ever take it off until you can scratch it off as done. And if you have to break it down, you have to break it down. But I'm talking about the daily things to do list, which is literally something that is literally accomplishable in one day. So what is that? How do you break that down and you put that in one day? And when you're done, I should show you mine. You just have a sheet after sheet of things crossed off on your list. And that's what keeps you going, because you're putting stuff on the list and you're taking stuff off the list, but you're very structured, and it's all done on paper. Because
Yeah.
on the computer, I know things fall off.
You're
Can
preaching
we
to the
see
choir
this?
on this one. I'm filled with lists and
Look, can you see this all crossed off
yeah,
on the camera? Just all crossed off, just all crossed off, just
yeah.
all crossed off. Because on the computer, I got all the fancy, expensive, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. I got them all. Well, not all. There's 26,000 more that come out every day. But I got these great programs that do this and flash and color flash and light and interrupt you and say, this is time to do this and all these things. But when you're working on your desktop, Eric, you have to clear it out of the way. You're doing something.
Yeah.
These and it goes out of sight, out of mind. But on that piece of paper, it never ever disappears until you cross it off. And that really is the your helps fuel you to keep working and to keep at it. That is very, very key to accomplish that no matter what. And following that system will get you profitable really, really fast. And I'll give you an example. Again, it's like, Tony, I've heard these words before. And Tony says, yeah, they're in the dictionary, but get this. I had a student, he was doing 5 health products sales a month on Amazon. 5. Okay. 5. Okay. And I worked with him on just the vision map. And in the second month, he was up to 12 sales a day. I was just working on the vision map. So that's the power of it. 5 a month or 12 a day. I mean, he was just rocketed that fast. But it's really just getting that focus in. And there's an ebook available at tonydurso.com/books. And that's been re-edited, updated, and it's coming out on a paperback on Amazon soon. But right now you could get the ebook, and it's got most of the information, but not all. But it's a really, really great start. Based on that, you're smart. You can figure out the rest.
Well, let me tell you what I really respect about what you just described, Tony, is that you didn't tell me about a guy that, went to $1 million a month in sales, right? These are really easy to fall on. They're compelling. That's how those Instagram ads work. Like, hey, look at this. This is my Maserati, and I got this because I'm selling, health pills. I apologize if I'm being campy in the description. It's not meant to detract from anybody that does anything. I know I run a coffee store. I've got a coffee brand. I literally have got my coffee behind me.
Oh,
But
great.
like you described, Tony, that fellow went from 5 sales a month to 12 a day. That's how it goes. I started a coffee store and I said, let me see if we can do this. The technology is there to do it easily. I chose a brand, I chose some things to get together. And I went from, 10 in the first month that I sold to today, while we've been talking, I've gotten 3 notifications of sales. Look, it's not going to be hundreds. It's, there are days when I don't sell any there, but the fact is that, like you said, if it starts here, it starts with 3 a day. GM rolled 1 car off the line at one point. Everybody has to think that way. This is possible. What matters is the fact that you put this into a place. You use it. You create a system that works for your mind and your lifestyle. And this is why we need guidance. This is why I love your approach, because this is not how to read this book and you'll be rich in 30 days. It's like, no, read this book and you'll have a system that you've got that can bring you to whatever you need to be so that you are where you want to be in X years.
It's so true. I've interviewed 5, 6, 700 people now. I've lost count because for a year or two, I was doing 2 interviews per show. So it's probably 5 or 600, 700, well-known people. And I can tell you literally and honestly, I can tell you and our listener here in the audience, every single person had a story and had to work at what they got to be successful. Only one person in some 700 millionaires and billionaires had his life handed to him. That was how rare it was. And I think kind of another person kind of like was well ushered through, but every other person had, I spoke to a guy who was homeless. He was on the street and he became a millionaire. I mean, what a great story. I've spoken to people that their parents put them to school to do this, and then they turn around and do something else and become super successful at something that the parents despised, you know, not despised that it was a bad thing, but just the parents, I want you to be a lawyer. I want you to be a doctor.
Right.
They go, I want to do this instead. And the parents like, oh, I'm not talking to you again or whatever. Amazing stories, really, really amazing. So if you in the audience, if you think things are tough, if you think you have to work for things, let me tell you, you are right. Things don't necessarily go for you. It doesn't always go easy. In fact, 1 out of 700, what are those? What's that percentage? This is real world. That's how everyone else had to work and become who they became. And so that's why we were saying it doesn't fall off a log, and you really got to work at it. And it's that purpose, that reason why you're doing it that keeps you going, whether you make money or not. But if you stay on it, you'll very, very soon make money, of course, because today we need money to buy our food and put gas in our cars. So that's how it works.
Well, and even it's when you give a relative comparison that's relatable to somebody, that's why like 5 a month to 12 a day, this is achievable. Because if you compare yourself against, somebody that's, on one of the sharks on Shark Tank versus somebody that's walking up and they've got a story and they've got a leap of faith. They're bringing something. They're going to try this, right? You don't want to try and relate to, the shark. You want to relate to the person that's on the other side. There's a famous story. It's like a fellow named Adeo Resi, and he had gone because he was really struggling. He was very successful by any right. Had started his own massive network, had successful exits from startups. It was an investor, doing incredible work, and yet was wrought with grief about his lack of success. And they said, like, he went to therapy, and in the end, they sort of uncovered, they said, why is it that you feel that you're not successful? He says, my college roommate has always outdone me. And they said, well, how is it possible that you've got all these things? Who was your college roommate? It's Elon Musk. So, well, perhaps you need to lower your bar. Like, so even successful people so his raison d'etre, his thing that he's aiming for is big. It's Elon Musk. You know what I'm going to do when I tell people that are listening right now? You're thinking about doing a thing, writing your first book, putting a blog together, starting a podcast, then find the person that did 5 a month and find out how they got to 12 a day. Like, that's it. Like, this is
Yeah.
inspire yourself with an attainable path. Like, you got to obviously aim. I always tell people, like, you don't want to just say like, oh, I'm going to be, 1.2% better tomorrow than I was today. I mean, actually compound interest is pretty decent if you do that every day. But that's why,
Absolutely
again,
right.
I
It's
appreciate
real
your
world.
choice of selections, right?
Yes, Eric, unless you've got somebody putting in mega money behind you. Yeah, you go to Shark Tank and sell your coffee, you may walk away when everything's done with 10, 15, 20% of your company. I don't know. Y- Just you've got now a boss telling you what to do, and your original recipe may no longer be your original recipe after a while. But yeah, you make money. So now people also refer to that as selling their soul. So now what? So you've got money. Are you happy? Let me I know this is going to rub people the wrong way, but money does not equal happiness. Accomplishing your purpose and your vision equals happiness. And when you
Right.
do that, money follows. It's just to flip around. Money is not happy. I have a dollar in my pocket. That doesn't make me happy. I'm talking
Yeah,
to successful people and I'm sharing that with the world and getting millions of listeners. That makes me overjoyed.
that's it. Right. And this is a really, it's an important thing for people to do. And like I said, there's so many things that are possible. I often say, like, so a bit of a visual joke, right? I'm a big fan of guys. I've got a friend who's a magician, and he's a lot more than a magician, but that just happens to be what he does. And I always joked. I said I watched him do like simple things, like just a simple card fan. It's something that, like, visually. So if you're watching on YouTube, you get to see this, right? It seems like the smallest thing in the world. It's unexciting, but what makes it easy to do is that I've done this probably for like half an hour a day for 6 months. Like, just every day I just muck around. And so the first time you do it, you can barely get them to stay together. You drop the cards, it's a whole thing. But now, 6 months into mucking around with this thing while I'm sitting on meetings or whatever, and I've got idle time, I don't know how to not do a fan of cards. I can't do it in a bad way. So my muscle memory for this, and my muscle memory for being able to jump into a task and know, like, I've got a system in my head. I know I can do this, right? This is why your map is so important, because it's like, once you build that muscle, you understand the structure, then you just simply just apply it to the situation. And that's what people really get stuck on. They're like, how does somebody become a great coach and yet they weren't a star athlete? It happens all the time. They're athletic, but they don't have to be, the athlete in order to be successful at it. You just look for the ways, you find how to unlock the power, and then you unlock it for somebody else, which is pretty amazing.
That's a good way to say it because it's like two different ways. It's like, do you read a book or watch a video by a person who's not a well-known chef, but yet you watch their video and you go, well, do you need to be a chef to say this tastes good or this
Right.
doesn't taste good? So there's a balance there. So yeah, an Olympic athlete isn't necessarily a gold medalist is not necessarily the only person that can train other gold medalists and so on and so forth, but someone that understands the basics in the games and what it takes to apply oneself to be successful in that endeavor. Absolutely correct.
Bill Belichick looks like he would struggle getting up a long flight of stairs. I mean, like, yeah, he's brought Tom Brady and his team to victory. And I shouldn't joke. Obviously, Bill Belichick in fantastic shape, but he was not an athlete. Like, or he was not a top level elite athlete necessarily, right? It is amazing, and that's what people need to sort of humble their goals in a bit and humble their understanding of the world. And that's really it too, right? When I look, you're 5 years in, you talk about 500 people that you've interviewed. If you started at the beginning and said, I'm going to interview 500 people in 5 years, it would be very easy to get off that bus fast, because you're going to say, there's no way that I'm going to be able to pull this off. You start to think. But if you say, like, I want to have a successful show, I want to be able to find people who I've never met and have interesting conversations and learn something with them and be able to pull a story out of them in 40 minutes easily. And I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn these lessons and apply them to my own life. And then while you're doing that, suddenly 500 people go by and you realize you've done it. And it's fantastic, right? So it's an admirable thing you've done, is that on the other side of it. Now, that's the other thing, I guess, Tony. How do you, people talk about gratitude and this thing, like, how do you sort of check where you're at as you go through this on the bigger picture stuff? Like, I know we have checklists and we have other things, but how do you sort of at a 6-month point, or just right now, how do you look back and say, it's been an okay year, or I've achieved something, but I'd like to be better at this?
Well, I may shock you. I don't look at things that way. I've learned, and it's only because you asked, because it's not a topic I discuss or talk about, and it's a topic that I joke around and say it's against the law, and there's a reason I say that. But when you're on the right path to helping others and doing the right thing, you start developing your morals, your goals, and as you go along that path, you start realizing that God provides everything for you, uh, and that your success is determined by God. The more you follow what God's will and plan is, the more doors open. And the way I look at it is, doors are opening for me, and people love my show, and my show grows because God provides that. I know it sounds, I don't want to say any incorrect or wrong words. It's a unique concept, and it's a concept that you're not allowed to talk about, because right now people say the universe. Well, that's an innate, non-thinking, non-intelligent rock, or dust that doesn't give you your life. That didn't create you. I walk outside, and there's a patch of dirt outside my house. And I look at it every day for 10 years, and I'm still waiting for a chicken to spontaneously combust and appear. It doesn't happen. The world, this whole falsity of, where things came from it's just a confusion. It's just a lie. God provides. There is a God that made you this amazing, great soul. And the more you realize that, the more you realize that bigger picture, the bigger the picture becomes. And and then you realize the more that doors open or close, because God wants you to go down a certain path. God is providing, God is allowing, God is directing. Now you have free will. If something goes wrong and it keeps going wrong and you don't care, you want to keep at it. And then later you find that it was a total mess up. You lost your money. You had all this problem. God allows you to learn whatever you want to learn. But when the doors are open, that's because he's trying to direct you down a certain path. Now, what I'm saying has taken me so many years to understand. It goes over people's head, and it actually hits against people trained other ways. So that's why actually say it's not something we're allowed to talk about. But because you asked the question, I am compelled to give you the true, honest answer. And the more sorry, the more you reflect or think about God, the more things start to open up, and it's a process. Just like you're growing your business from 5 sales a month to 12 sales a day. It's a whole process, but the more you think about it, just a little reflection time, not meditation. I don't know what meditation is still to this day. I don't promote it. I don't know what it is, but just start thinking about God, focus on God, and it just starts opening up. And it's not even magic. It's just life. It just works. So I just wanted to say that in answer to your question that things are rolling for me because this is what God wants me to do. God wants me to connect people to successful people and help them grow. And the more I work on that, the easier in a way it gets. Sort of like the muscle memory. I can jump on a show and interview anybody because I understand millionaires, billionaires, and elite people. I'll interview presidents, heads of states. It just doesn't matter because I understand that now. But it's God's gift that He gave me. God gives gift. My gift. I'm Italian. I can talk, right?
I
I can
appreciate.
speak. I can communicate. So yeah, not because we're not allowed really too much to say things about religion or talk about it. But I had to answer your question.
I appreciate your candor, Tony. And it's one thing that is, yeah, it's a difficult topic, and even for folks that maybe struggle with, you know, and I've had a lot of Don W. Long and I spoke a couple times. He's actually been on the show a couple times. We talked even where folks, if they have to map it to spirituality, whatever the hell they want to describe it, it's just even the Stoic philosophers often talked about is there are certain things that are beyond our control. And that's what we have to look to what we can affect. And like you said, be good, be ethical, do things that help people, give. And in the end, what comes back opportunity, through that means, right? Like but it's inspiring, when you hear folks that are committed to it and that live they walk the walk, I suppose is sort of the phrase that people say. So,
And it starts
um,
slow. It's not like fast immediately. All of a sudden, the world opens up or the sun
that's
shines down.
right.
No, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. It's slow. It can be fast, but it's slow. It's just a little bit. It's like, you know, and I'm not really trying. I don't push religion or anything or any type of worship, but just start thinking about it a little bit, and it just starts making more and more sense. And I guess that's what I'm trying to allude to. So whether it grates you or incorrect, it's still true. You were
Yeah.
made
Well,
by
and
an intelligent being. You weren't made by a piece of rock.
and in the end, like I said, this has been really inspiring. Tony, your ethic and your effort and your expertise come together in every discussion. And it's been a real blessing and an honor to spend time with you today. So TonyDierso.com. Of course, we'll have links in the show notes. I'll make sure that people get out there. And because your book is going to be hopefully hitting Amazon around the time this goes out, depending on timing. If it has not, anybody wants to drop me an email, I'll actually have, or if you're on the YouTube version of this, drop a comment, and the first 10 folks that they need to, if they're having commercial problems with getting to this, any financial risk, issues, I will happily fund, and make sure that 10 people deserve this book. And so I'm going to make sure, so reach out to me, just hit me up on email. And like I said, I'll make sure that we put a few copies in some hands and educate more people, give them an opportunity,
That's
because that's really what it
amazing.
is.
Thank you, Eric. And when you get it on YouTube, I will send thousands and thousands of people to it. And we just hope we get through the YouTube, whatever it is
Get through the algorithm. Yeah.
the
Well, I tell you,
gauntlet, the
uh,
gauntlet.
I had a funny situation where I had, a really incredible individual, John McAfee. He was on my show
Oh,
last
wow.
year in
Wow.
April, and
Wow.
John was just an incredible human. And we immediately went right into some really challenging topics that are algorithmically a problem for stuff. And at the time, I was only publishing audio only, so it just goes up with like an audiogram, like, so it's the audio on YouTube. So literally nobody goes to YouTube to listen; they like to watch. Now that I publish the video version, you get a couple of thousand views per episode. It's a little bit better. But I thought to myself, I've got the video of this, and this was even before John had recently passed, and I thought I'd love to put it up there because it was just such a dynamic discussion. I thought, good golly, I can't, because if I put fresh content up there that's got a lot of hot button things in, next thing you know, old DiscoPosse is on the wrong side of cancel because of a problem. So I choose, and then
Yeah.
with John's passing, I just choose out of respect that I shouldn't,
Well,
come along and
it's your content, you own it, and there's places like BitChute and Rumble that, there's no, I don't talk about anything controversial. I really, really try hard not to. I don't even swear on my shows.
it's funny that we started talking about that too at the
Yeah,
very beginning. It's
but why it gets censored on YouTube? Because they obviously some they pick and choose who they want to promote. It's real simple. I send 20,000 visitors to YouTube and I get like 2 views. It's like, what? So they're choosing who they want to see the show. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts. I'll send 20,000 people to Rumble. I'll get, I get a zillion views. So you just put it out on a couple places and monitor.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a challenging world. We'll see. I think we'll see a lot of change in the coming months as this stuff sort of comes to the point where they're going to have some regulatory stuff to deal with around it, but we'll see. But anyways, so Tony, thank you very much. And like I said, for folks, go to tonydioso.com, check out the show, get the podcast on there. Really, really great lessons. And of course, get the book. And like I said, Tony, you're a prolific author, lots of other books, non-business books as well. So you've
Yeah.
got great fiction work as well that you do. So really, really cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The honor is mine. Thank you so much for having me on Disco Posse. I loved it. Thank you.